A defeated samurai kneels in the dirt. His captors hold out a wakizashi, the short blade meant for the ritual. His peers expect him to take it. His training demands it. His honor requires it. Konishi Yukinaga pushes the blade away, not because he fears death, because his god forbids him to take his own life. In that single refusal, two worlds collide. The warrior code says, prove your loyalty with your blood. The foreign faith says, your soul belongs to someone else. Who owns a samurai's life? That question almost reshaped Japan. To understand how a warrior class came within reach of mass conversion, start with what the missionaries walked into. Japan in the 1540s was not a country. It was a knife fight dressed as a map. Competing warlords. Constant war. One lost battle could erase a family line. The Portuguese arrived into this chaos. They brought two things that traveled together by design: Christianity and matchlock guns. The Jesuits did not just preach. They operated as brokers, sitting between Japanese lords and the foreign trade that could keep a domain alive. Here is the leverage that made it work. Japan had iron. Japan had sulfur. Japan had charcoal. But gunpowder needs one more ingredient, saltpeter. And Japan had no natural source. Lords could forge the guns. They could not fuel them. The Portuguese held the keys to the saltpeter trade through their networks in China and India. They only opened the door for friends. So the math was simple. A daimyo did not need to believe in Christ to see the advantage. Conversion meant port access. Port access meant muskets, powder, lead, and foreign goods that translated into survival. Once the lord converted, his entire household followed. Vassals, retainers, townsmen, because the domain's existence now depended on staying aligned with the new operating system. This is where the myth breaks. The popular image says samurai rejected foreign influence on principle. The reality was more transactional. When the stakes are extinction, ideology bends. The Portuguese carracks reinforced this pressure. Massive vessels, dark hulls. Locals sometimes called them black ships, a term that would echo again 2 centuries later when American warships forced Japan open. But the first black ships carried something the American ones did not: a faith. These carracks announced a different world system arriving at the shoreline. Priests, merchants, interpreters, and the implied threat that trade could shift to a rival port if a daimyo proved difficult. At first, most conversions were political moves dressed in religious language. Lords presented themselves as disciplined, enlightened, favored by a powerful god, while securing material advantage. The Jesuits gained protection in churches. The daimyo gained foreign access and a new tool to consolidate power. But deals like that never stay transactional. Communities formed. Rituals became routine. Christian symbols sat beside swords and armor. Belief became its own force. For some samurai, Christianity stopped being a convenient badge. It became a higher loyalty. And that is when the shogunate's problem begins. Loyalty is the core resource of a warrior state. Bushido, as a lived ethic, treated honor as public currency. If a commander failed, he did not just lose a battle. He risked staining his lineage and weakening the lord he served. Seppuku functioned as a brutal reset. It turned failure into controlled sacrifice. It prevented interrogation. It prevented public humiliation. It kept the story clean. Christianity denied that emergency exit. Catholic doctrine placed self-killing in the category of mortal sin. That is not a minor disagreement. It does not adjust the samurai code. It removes one of its core mechanisms. So when a Christian samurai faced defeat, he faced a choice with no clean option. Follow the warrior rule, endanger your soul. Follow the church, accept disgrace, and drag your family name through shame. Konishi Yukinaga stood at that exact fracture. He was not a minor figure. Sources describe him as a high-ranking commander and admiral, shaped by decades of war and political calculation. After his side lost the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, the old expectation waited for him. A defeated samurai of his status was supposed to take responsibility in the accepted way. He refused the wakizashi. His captors paraded him through the streets. They beheaded him like a criminal. In samurai eyes, a disgrace. In his own eyes, a martyr's death. One image captures the fracture. A warrior trained from youth to reach for the blade, instead reached for prayer. Not because he became weak, because his hierarchy of obligations changed. That change is what frightened the emerging regime. A shogunate can tolerate diverse religious practice as long as it does not reorganize allegiance. But Christianity brought external reference points, foreign priests, foreign patrons, foreign ships, and a moral authority that did not originate in Edo. Even if most converts were not plotting rebellion, the structure itself looked like a rival chain of command. States do not panic over ideas, they panic over systems. A faith that can tell a warrior not to commit seppuku can tell him other things too. Once a critical number of armed men believe their soul answers to a power beyond the Lord, the ruler has to assume the worst. Kanishi's choice was not just personal tragedy, it was a signal. It told Japan's new masters that conversion had crossed the line from useful alliance into competing loyalty. So the shogunate moved to sever the link before it could grow back. Bans came first, then public warnings, then punishments designed to make an example of hesitation. The goal was not just to remove believers, it was to make belief socially impossible. That is where the fumii enters. Officials placed an image of Christ or Mary on the ground and required people to step on it, simple on paper. In practice, a weapon aimed at identity. For someone raised on honor codes, it demanded public self-betrayal. Step, and you live with the stain. Refuse, and you die in a way designed to warn everyone watching. The shogunate understood something basic about loyalty. You do not just hunt leaders, you force ordinary people to prove, in public, which side they are on. You turn conscience into evidence. Pressure like that did not always produce quiet compliance. By the 1630s, the Christian samurai moment had already passed. The converted lords were dead or broken. What remained were peasants, masterless ronin, and families with nothing left to lose. When the final explosion came at Shimabara, it was not a warrior's last stand. It was the aftershock of one. The rebels fortified Hara Castle, not as a romantic gesture, but as the only defensive position left. Inside were families, hungry fighters, and a community that decided it would rather die together than dissolve one confession at a time. Their figurehead was Amakusa Shiro. He was 16 years old, described as a kind of messianic symbol. Whether every story told about him was true matters less than the role he played. He gave the uprising a face that turned tax anger and religious fear into a single cause. The shogunate responded with the full weight of a state defending its monopoly on force. An army of battle-hardened ronin and desperate peasants, roughly 37,000, held Hara Castle longer than anyone expected. A rebellion that survives becomes a blueprint, so the regime reached for an outside tool to finish an inside problem. The shogun hated Christians so much, he asked other Christians to shoot them. The Dutch ship DERYP fired 426 cannonballs into the castle over 15 days. It did not work well. The guns were too light to break the walls. Japanese commanders eventually sent the Dutch home. It was shameful to rely on foreigners to fight their own peasants. Protestants fired on Catholics at the request of a Buddhist-backed warrior government. Trade rivals turned useful allies because the priority was not theology, it was containment. When the walls finally fell, what followed was massacre. Then a purge designed to remove not just leaders, but memory. The state's message was clear: no alternative allegiance would survive in public. After Shimabara, the sound of Christianity in Japan did not vanish. It went underground. For the next 2.5 centuries, communities of Kakure Kirishitan, hidden Christians, kept fragments of the faith alive. No priests, no churches, no safety. They adapted to survive. Mary disguised as Canon, the Buddhist goddess of mercy. Prayers whispered like family heirlooms. The point was continuity, not visibility. That is the lasting lesson of the Christian samurai episode. Japan's strongest weapon in that struggle was not the sword in a warrior's hand. It was the belief that told him what his life was for. And for a brief, strange century, two beliefs fought for that space, one rooted in the soil of the islands, one arriving on dark-hulled ships from across the world. The shogunate won the open war. It never fully killed the idea that created the fracture. If you want another case where warriors face impossible odds and still choose their code, watch the Mongol video next. Subscribe for more like this.